Great. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate that. It's a great opportunity to come and share with you today. I just want to kind of reemphasize some of the points that have been brought up already, is that this is definitely a collaborative effort, a collaborative approach that needs to be taken on this with the cost of these systems. You definitely need to look at all those sources that are available. What I'm going to talk about today is, I do want to focus in on the EQIP program, but I also want to come at it from a two-prong approach, understanding that there's a technical side and there's also the financial side. So I want to try to mesh those two together so you kind of understand the process and also have the understanding that this whole process of getting a digester system installed is something that is going to take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, maybe not even within a year. It's just something that you'll have to work through the entire process to get this to actually happen. Just a real quick outline for today. What I'm going to do is just share a little bit about the history of where we as an agency, NRCS, where we have provided assistance dealing with the anaerobic digestion systems. Also, I want to talk about this is really important point of we need to be addressing resource concerns. That's the main focus of what we do as an agency is we have to be looking at these resource concerns. If you don't have a resource concern, then we're really not going to be able to provide assistance. So this is really the critical element for NRCS assistance. Also, just want to talk about, again, some of the programs focusing mainly on EQIP. As we look at what we do as an agency, we want to just let you understand that we're looking at many different resource concerns. We're focusing in on the soil, the water, the air, the plants, animals, and then also energy. So we're looking at all of these different elements and all of these portions that are tied in with our environment. So digestion is definitely an important thing to be looking at, to be addressing. But as we look at our programs, we have a lot of other resource concerns that we need to make sure that we're also looking at. So this kind of helps you to see where it fits within the system. Again, as a background, between 2003 and 2017, NRCS, we did provide assistance on 49 anaerobic digesters. And as you can see here, the different programs that we had that assistance, and by far the biggest program is the EQIP Environmental Quality Incentives Program. You see we had 45. Remember the spike that was shown on an earlier slide where we have the Ag Water Enhancement Program and also the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Initiative. Those programs were around the 2011-2000 time frame. That's where you saw that spike, where you had those additional programs. And as was mentioned, these programs are no longer available. So we're focusing in mainly from NRCS from the EQIP standpoint. And you see we have obligated a little over $11 million on working with digester systems. Prior to 2009, as has been alluded to as well, we have what we call conservation practice standards. We had two standards prior to 2009. One was called an anaerobic digester ambient temperature, and then we also had the anaerobic digester controlled temperature. And whichever type of system you were going to have installed or what you were looking at going with, that is the standard that you would choose. Well, after 2009, we combined those two standards into one. It's just now called anaerobic digester. So if this is something that you're interested in looking at, you could come in and to the local field office and talk with them, saying that you're interested in an anaerobic digestion system, and we can definitely sit down and talk with you about this. Just quickly let you know, ambient temperature, generally looking at covered lagoons, is where you're not adding any type of heat or anything else to control the temperature. Then your controlled temperature, you're going to be looking at some type of a heat source, whether it's excess heat from the digester itself or some other external heat to maintain a certain level to get the gas production that you're looking for. One of the things, again, like what Fred was talking about, we're looking at manure management plans, manure management systems. When we focus in on our meeting with a landowner that has a livestock operation, we generally focus in on these 6 manure functions. So we're looking at all of these, we're focusing in on all of these elements, and we're looking at each and every one, whereas anaerobic digestion is just the one we've got circled. It's a treatment. So it is 1/6 of all the processes that we are focusing in on. And the note that I just want to kind of emphasize is that the digester may only be a part of this overall system. You have all other components, different applications that you could be looking at. So again, the digester is just could be one element of this overall system. This is where the collaboration, this is where working with other agencies, organizations, other funding sources could definitely be a real plus to be plugging into those. Now, I know we're really focusing in on the financial side of things, but again, I want to back up just a little bit for folks to understand the time commitments, the constraints that are kind of in here. The first thing we have to do if you're going to work with the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, is we have to determine, are there any resource concerns? Do you have anything that's dealing with that soil, water, air, plant, animals, or energy element that we need to address? And we do that through what we call our planning process. We go through several steps to determine by going out into the field, looking at the fields, evaluating, talking with the landowners, the operators, and determining if there is a resource concern that needs to be addressed. One thing we do have, if it's an animal feeding operation and that they are looking for financial and or technical assistance for that animal operation, then they're going to have to develop what we call a comprehensive nutrient management plan. And in that plan, they're going to determine what their record of decisions, what are the practices that they're going to actually apply to address those resource concerns. And the three main resource concerns that we focus in on for our CNMP is that we're looking at water quality, we're looking at soil erosion, and air quality. And when we're dealing with anaerobic digestion systems, we're focusing in on, we could have water quality issues, and also we could have air quality issues. So that's where the anaerobic digestion might come into play. Again, I need to understand that there could be multiple conservation practices that are needed to address the resource concerns that may be on that particular farm or operations. So again, this is the importance of going through this process. And also, I think, again, stressing that it's going to take time to actually go through each and every one of these. So as we look at the anaerobic digester, it's our practice standard code 366. And the purposes of what we're trying to address, these resource concerns. First thing is we can look at managing odors. How can we use the digester if there's an odor issue? And it was alluded to that, maybe from a relationship with neighbors. If we can reduce the odors, that might help to maintain that relationship or to build the relationship. Also, we put in here the reduction of net effect of greenhouse gases. So here we're looking at air quality. Both of these, the odors and greenhouse gases, we're looking at the air quality side of things. Also, we have in here reduction or reducing of our pathogens, and we do know that digesters do have an impact on that. So that is something we look at. We have another purpose, which is facilitating energy production by capturing that biogas. One of the things, I did put a star on here, and we're going to talk about that here in just a moment, because as Fred said, this is one thing that NRCS, by statute, we are not in the energy production business. And that kind of goes right in here. Based on the Agricultural Act of 2014, it says that our agency can assist in energy conservation. And that's a huge difference between energy generation. So we can only deal with energy conservation, and we are exempt from doing any practices that will have as the primary purpose of doing renewable energy production. So generation of electricity, if you're doing compressed biogases, those are things that we cannot provide financial and or technical assistance on those because of the limitations from the Farm Bill. So as you see the last bullet here, we will not provide any payments on the energy generation side, but yet we can provide assistance for other components of the digester. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that here in just a few moments. So how are you eligible for EQIP? How can you receive financial assistance, and or whether it's financial or technical? Well, number one, the individual or the entity must control the eligible land, and there's some criteria on what meets the eligible land. We also have this, which was introduced in the last Farm Bill, adjusted gross income limitation. It's approximately $900,000, the gross maximum, and that's averaged over the 3 previous years. So that could potentially be a limitation on eligibility. Also, they have to look at their whether you have your erodible land, highly erodible land, and your wetlands, if you're all in compliance with those requirements. And then the last thing is what we talked about a little bit earlier, is that a comprehensive nutrient management plan needs to be put together to make sure that all of the necessary resource concerns are being properly addressed. Again, looking at this program, the purpose for EQIP is to help producers to install these practices, these conservation practices that we have available, again, for the eligible agricultural land. Payments can be made up to 75% of the cost of the practice that's being installed. Then we do have the caveat that if it's socially disadvantaged, or you have beginning farmers, veteran farmers, you can receive upwards of 90% of the cost of that particular practice. Now, there are some limitations again on the financial side of things. In the 2008 Farm Bill, there was a payment limit set at $300,000. Now, the chief of our organization could grant a waiver that could go up to $450,000. Now, in the 2014 Farm Bill, that $300,000 was eliminated, and now the limit is set at $450,000. So for all contracts, that's the maximum that an entity or group can receive, is $450,000 during the life of that particular Farm Bill. So for Farm Bill of 2014. Now, what's it going to be for the next Farm Bill? We don't know, but currently through this Farm Bill, $450,000 is the maximum that can be obtained, and that's not per practice. That is what that entity can receive over the life of that Farm Bill. One of the things that I think should also be worth mentioning is that there are several other practices that generally coincide with a digester when you're dealing with a manure management system. And sometimes this may be what landowners look at, is that maybe they'll find the additional assistance outside to put in the digester, but they'll look at NRCS maybe to provide technical and or financial assistance on some of these other practices, such as waste separation facility. Maybe they have sand that need to have separated out before it goes into the digester. Maybe they need to reduce the solids before it goes in, or maybe they want to remove solids after it has been digested, and they want to use those solids for some other application, or they desire to again remove the solids so they can store the liquids and land apply in a more efficient way. Maybe they need to store the material before or after digestion. Is there some type of treatment that is going to be needed? Do they want to try to partition nutrients? So maybe there's some chemical enhancements that they want to go with, or some other way of treating the manures. If you're going to use, let's say, a covered lagoon, you might utilize our roofs and cover standards so that you can cover that lagoon properly to capture the biogas. How are you going to move the manure from one place to another? Well, that's where we have the waste transfer standard could be utilized to help with that. And then also the last one I have listed is waste treatment lagoon. There are other standards, but these are some of the main practices that landowners look at that kind of tie in with the anaerobic digestion system. So how do you go about contracting? What's the process? Well, the first thing is we need to complete that comprehensive nutrient management plan, because through that plan, we're able to determine what conservation practices through the record of decisions what practices they're actually looking at implementing. They determine this timeline as to when they actually want to install the practices, and through that, then they can develop the financial contract. Now, one of the things, again, another caveat that we have in here is that all of the practices, all of the conservation practices that are listed in that comprehensive nutrient management plan must be implemented by the end of the contract period that you set up with NRCS. Now, the contract periods can vary in length, but typically they're 1 to 3, potentially up to 5 years, and could go a little bit longer. But your time frame on those are generally fairly short. So that this is definitely something to think about when you're looking at putting together your financial contract dealing with manure management types of systems. Another program I just want to quickly announce or talk about, and many of you may be familiar with this, is the Conservation Innovation Grants. This is a program that we have available that allows individuals, organizations to kind of share some of the technologies that they've been looking at to try to get those innovative technologies out on the land. We spend anywhere from $15 to $20 million a year on this program, and they can provide up to 50% federal matching funds, and for up to a maximum of $2 million that they can go on a project such as this. Here are just a few of the digester projects that have been through the Conservation Innovation Grant approach. They cover a whole gamut of different aspects. They're looking at some of the regional digesters. They're looking at different types of digesters. They're looking at ways of trying to extract energy, to extract nutrients, looking at pathogen reduction, just a lot of different aspects. So there's some things that could possibly be done through some payment through the Conservation Innovation Grant approach by obtaining those grants that might be of some benefit or some use as well for some funding. So as I draw things to an end here, just want to say that there are several conservation practices that may be required to deal with this manure management system to address those resource concerns. And again, anaerobic digestion may be one of those practices. We need to develop that comprehensive nutrient management plan. Then you have the payment limitations. And then finally, I guess I would say that we do have the Conservation Innovation Grants approach as another way of demonstrating innovative technologies. So with that, I'll return control to Nick for question and answers.